When my aunt accidentally sent me a video exposing my family's darkest secret. She had no idea I saw it, but instead of confronting them right away, I played along, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. What started as a simple text message would soon turn into a cold, calculated revenge they never saw coming. And by the time they realized what I had done, it was already too late. My name is Olivia, and up until a few nights ago, I truly believed my family loved me. I wasn't naive. I knew we weren't perfect. My mother could be demanding, my brother had always been irresponsible, and my aunt? Well, let's just say she thrived on drama. But through it all, I thought we were a family. A real family. The kind that stuck together no matter what. And I had done my part. For years, I had been the one they turned to whenever things got tough. I paid for my brother Jake's college tuition, even though he never finished his degree. I covered my mother's rent, her debts, her emergencies, which, conveniently, always seemed to pop up the second I got paid. And my Aunt Sandra? She had a long history of bad investments, but somehow, I was always the one bailing her out. I never complained. Not once. Because that's what family does, right? We help each other. But looking back, I should have seen the signs. There was never a thank you. No heartfelt appreciation. Just more requests. More guilt. More expectations. And through it all, I convinced myself that they cared, that all the sacrifices I was making meant something. Then came the night everything changed. I was cooking dinner when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a video message from Aunt Sandra. I wiped my hands, grabbed my phone, and absent-mindedly tapped the screen, expecting some old family clip or a funny meme she had found. But the moment I pressed play, I heard my mother's voice. Olivia should be grateful. She'd be nothing without us. My stomach dropped. The video was shaky, like someone had accidentally left their phone recording on a table. But the voices? Crystal clear. Then came my brother's laugh. She's such a pathetic failure, but at least she's good for something, paying our bills. I felt my breath hitch. Then, my aunt's voice, the same woman who had just sent me this video, added with a smirk, "If Olivia ever stops sending money, we'll just guilt her into it. She's too soft to say no." A wave of cold numbness washed over me. They weren't talking about some stranger. They weren't even trying to be subtle. They were talking about me, mocking me, laughing at how easy it was to manipulate me. I had spent years sacrificing my own financial security to make sure they never struggled the way I had. I had skipped vacations, held off on buying my first home, stayed late at work just to ensure they always had what they needed. And this is what they really thought of me? I was still frozen, my thumb hovering over the screen, when suddenly the video disappeared. "This message has been unsent." I stared at the notification. Sandra had realized her mistake. She must have panicked and deleted the video, hoping I hadn't seen it. Maybe she reassured my mother and brother, told them everything was fine, that I had never watched it. But I had. I should have called her out immediately. Should have confronted them, demanded an explanation. But instead, I put my phone down. I pretended I never saw it. Because if they thought I was still their naive, obedient little bank account, I'd let them believe it. For now. But this time, things were going to be different. I barely slept that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the words from the video playing over and over in my head. My mother's cold dismissal. My brother's laughter. My aunt's smug assurance that I was too weak to say no. I had spent years convincing myself that my sacrifices meant something. That deep down, my family appreciated everything I did. But the truth was staring me right in the face now. Undeniable, raw, and devastating. They didn't love me. They loved what I could give them. But I didn't cry. I didn't call my mother demanding answers. Didn't text my aunt asking why. Didn't confront my brother for laughing at me. Instead, I lay there, letting the weight of reality settle into my bones. And as I did, a decision formed in my mind. I wasn't going to explode in anger. I wasn't going to argue or plead for their respect. No, I was going to do something far more powerful. I was going to let them believe I was still in the dark. Because if they thought I was still their naive, obedient little ATM, they would never see it coming when I finally walked away for good. The next morning, Everything looked the same. The sun peeked through my curtains just like always. My coffee brewed with its usual rich aroma. But something inside me had shifted. It was like I was seeing my life from the outside for the first time. And then, right on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. A sweet, casual greeting like she was just checking in. I almost laughed. She never texted just to see how I was doing. There was always a reason. Always a request hidden somewhere. And sure enough, moments later, another message followed. Rent was due soon. Could I send it by Friday? There it was. The same cycle. The same pattern. Before today, I would have responded immediately. A simple, of course, don't worry, would have been enough to make them happy. Maybe I'd even apologize for not sending it sooner, just to make sure they didn't feel inconvenienced. Not this time. I hovered over the keyboard, erasing the automatic response that had been drilled into me for years. Instead, I typed just 3 words. I can't this month. And then I hit send. I didn't have to wait long. My phone buzzed within seconds. My mother's tone had shifted completely. No more fake warmth. Just panic. She demanded to know what I meant. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting her sit with her own confusion. A few more messages rolled in. She insisted this was serious. She reminded me that they were counting on me, that they had no other option. Then my aunt chimed in. A sugar-coated text wrapped in concern. Hey, sweetheart, your mom is freaking out. Is everything okay? I almost laughed. Is everything okay? Sure. Everything was great. For years, I had been paying for their lives. And the one time I even hinted at stopping, they panicked. Not once did they ask if I was okay, if I needed help. Because it was never about me. It never had been. I took a deep breath and replied, keeping my message short. I have some unexpected expenses this month. I can't send anything. Sorry. That was it. No explanation. No apology. And then I waited. What happened next told me everything I needed to know. The silence was deafening. For the first time in years, I had said no, and they had no idea how to handle it. I stared at my screen, watching the 3 little dots appear and disappear as my mother typed, stopped, then typed again. I could picture her now, pacing the house, seething, trying to craft the perfect guilt trip. Then her next message came through. She wanted to know what could possibly be more important than my family. There it was. The manipulation. The same tactic they had used on me for years. I let the message sit there. I didn't respond. Less than a minute later, another text followed. She reminded me that Jake had no way to cover rent. If he got evicted, it would be my fault. Ah, the brother card. A classic move. Then another. She told me how they had raised me, how they had taken care of me when I had nothing. And this is how you repay us? I clenched my jaw, my fingers tightening around my phone. When I had nothing, they never took care of me. I put myself through school. I worked 3 jobs to escape that house. And the moment I had money, they latched onto me like parasites, draining me dry. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was my aunt. She tried to soften the situation, but the message was laced with guilt. Olivia, sweetheart, don't do this. We're family. Your mom is just upset. You know how she gets. Just send the rent and everything will be fine. Fine. For who? I put my phone down, my heart pounding. I needed a second to breathe. To think. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at the clock on the wall. I could feel it, something shifting inside me. For years, I had been scared of this moment. Scared that if I ever stopped paying, they would hate me. They would cut me off. They would turn their backs on me. But now? Now, I knew the truth. They never truly loved me. They only loved what I could give them. And the second I stopped, they showed me exactly who they were. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was my father. There was no fake sweetness, no pretend concern. His message was blunt, cold, and full of contempt. I was being selfish. I was abandoning my family. I was acting like an entitled brat. I needed to grow up and do the right thing. And just like that, the mask slipped. No more love. No more pretense. Just demands. I stared at the words on my screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. And then one last notification popped up. A voice message. From Aunt Sandra. My hands trembled slightly as I hovered over the play button. Something told me that what I was about to hear would change everything. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I took a deep breath. And pressed play. Before we continue, I have a question for you. Have you ever been in a situation where the people who were supposed to love you only cared about what you could do for them? If this story resonates with you, hit that like button. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. Because what happens next? You won't believe it. I pressed play and my aunt's voice filled the quiet room. Olivia, listen, she started, her tone sharp, impatient. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but this isn't funny. Your mother is losing her mind, your father is furious, and honestly, I don't blame them. A short pause. Then a bitter chuckle. You've always been, well, a little ungrateful. But this? This is beyond selfish. I clenched my jaw, my grip on the phone tightening. You have a good job, don't you? You make more money than any of us. You don't need that money. Meanwhile, your family is struggling and you just decide one day that you don't care anymore? That you're done. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to keep listening. You owe them, Olivia. After everything they've done for you, after all the sacrifices they made. They gave you life and now you're just going to walk away? Pretend they don't exist? Another pause. This time, her voice dropped lower, colder. If you really want to be that kind of person, fine. But don't expect them to forgive you. And don't expect to come crawling back when you realize how much you need them. Because once you cross this line, there's no coming back. The message ended. Silence followed. I stared at my phone, my ears ringing. My hands were numb. I should have felt scared. I should have panicked, should have scrambled to fix things, to make it right. But I didn't. I felt calm. No, more than that. I felt free. Because she had just confirmed everything. They didn't love me. They didn't respect me. They didn't even see me as a person. I was just a bank account to them, a walking, breathing ATM. And the moment I stopped handing out money, I became nothing. And if that was the case, then maybe it was time to be nothing to them. I went to my contacts, blocked my mother, blocked my father, blocked my aunt. And just like that, for the first time in years, I was free. Or so I thought. The next morning, I woke to a pounding on my front door. A sharp, relentless knock. Too aggressive to be a neighbor. Too insistent to be a delivery. A chill ran down my spine. I had a feeling I already knew who it was. I took a deep breath and walked to the door, fingers hesitating on the handle for just a second before I pulled it open. There he was, Jake. His face was twisted with something between anger and desperation. His clothes were wrinkled like he hadn't slept. His eyes wild, bloodshot. Are you serious? He snapped the second he saw me. What the hell is wrong with you? I kept my expression neutral. Good morning to you too. He scoffed, running a hand through his already messy hair. Don't do that. Don't act like this isn't a big deal. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. I don't know, Jake. Maybe I just got tired of being treated like a piggy bank. His jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. Oh my God. Not this again. I let out a bitter laugh. Not this again? Not this again. Jake, I've been paying your rent for years. I've covered your bills, your groceries, even your stupid gym membership. And the one time I say no, Mom calls me selfish. Dad tells me I'm unacceptable. And you show up at my door like I committed some crime. His lips parted like he was going to argue, but no words came out. So I kept going. And don't even try to pretend you care about me, because I saw the video. His face went pale. For the first time, real fear flickered in his eyes. What video? He asked, voice suddenly quieter. I smiled, but it wasn't a kind one. You know exactly what video. Jake shifted on his feet, glancing away. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. Look, he muttered. It wasn't serious, okay? We were just joking. You're being dramatic. Joking. My voice was quiet now, but sharp as glass. He looked at me then, and for a second, I thought I saw something raw, but it was gone just as quickly. You don't mean this, he said finally, his voice desperate now. I met his gaze, unwavering. Yes, I said. I do. Another silence. Then his expression twisted. His mouth curled into something ugly. Fine, he spat. You want to be a selfish B*TCH? Go ahead. But don't come crawling back when you realize you have no one left. And with that, he turned and walked away. I stood there watching him go. My chest felt tight, but my spine was straight. Because he was wrong. I did have someone left. I had myself. I took a shaky breath and closed the door. But just as I did, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. The name flashing across it made my stomach twist. My mother. For a second, I just stared at it. Then, without hesitation, I turned my phone over, face down. I wasn't going to answer. Not this time. For so long, I had been at their mercy, answering their demands, their guilt trips, their endless manipulation. Not anymore. I walked away from my phone and into my kitchen, filling a glass of water and taking a slow sip. The truth was I was done. Done being the constant source of money. Done being the safety net that kept them afloat when they couldn't be bothered to take responsibility for their own lives. Done with the lies, the manipulation. They had never once asked how I was doing. Never once cared about the toll it took on me to be the one always picking up the slack. I had carried their weight for years. My mother's, my father's, my brother's. And for what? So they could mock me behind my back? So they could sit around, laughing about how easily they could control me? No, that ended now. But my decision didn't go unnoticed. The next morning, as I sat in my living room, the weight of it all finally settled in. But there was no regret, no second guessing. I had made the right choice. Then my doorbell rang. It was early, too early. The kind of early where normal people were still asleep. For a second, I thought about ignoring it. Maybe it was a neighbor, maybe a package, or maybe something else. Another knock, louder, more insistent. I took a slow breath, steeling myself, and walked to the door. My fingers hesitated on the handle. My heart pounded. And then I opened it. And standing there, looking more desperate than I'd ever seen him, was my father. I stood at the door long after my father had left, listening to the sound of his car disappearing down the street. The weight of the moment settled in, but for the first time it wasn't crushing. It was freeing. For years I had let them dictate my life. Every decision, every sacrifice, every dollar, always given to keep them afloat. But now I had finally taken back control. Still, I knew better than to believe this was over. People like them didn't just let go. They would claw their way back in, find new ways to twist the narrative, make me the villain. Not this time. I walked straight to my desk, opened my laptop, and began untangling myself from them completely. I canceled every automatic payment. I removed their access to my bank accounts. I blocked their numbers from every financial institution. One by one, every connection they had to me financially was severed. By the time I was done, they had nothing left to hold over me. No lifeline, no access, no more control. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. This was it, the final cut. A part of me expected to feel a crushing sadness, some lingering guilt. Instead, I felt something else. Relief. The messages came in waves over the next few days, first, desperate, pleading ones from my mother and aunt. Then anger. Accusations. Insults. My brother tried a different tactic, attempting to play innocent as if he hadn't laughed at my expense just weeks ago. I didn't respond. And eventually, the silence stretched long enough for them to understand. They had lost their grip on me. I was no longer their safety net. I was no longer their bank account. I was no longer theirs. And that left me with the most terrifying question of all: who was I without them? For years, my life had revolved around their needs. Every plan I made, every extra shift I worked, every moment of stress, all tied back to keeping them comfortable. Now, for the first time, I had no one to answer to. No one to put before myself. I grabbed a notebook from my desk and opened it to a blank page. And for the first time in years, I started making a list, not of things I had to do for them, not of bills I needed to pay, not of obligations that were never mine to begin with. A list of things I wanted. Places I wanted to see. Goals I wanted to accomplish. Things I had never let myself dream about because there had never been time, never been extra money, never been space for me to exist outside of them. Now, there was nothing but space. And as I stared down at the blank page in front of me, for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. Because the only thing standing in my way was me. This story isn't just about money. It's about self-worth, boundaries, and breaking free from toxic cycles. Too often, we're taught that family is everything, that we owe them, no matter the cost. But what happens when that love is conditional? When it's built on what you can give rather than who you are? Olivia's story is a powerful reminder that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. That real family doesn't manipulate, doesn't guilt trip, and doesn't see you as a resource to be drained. Walking away isn't easy, but sometimes it's the only way to truly find freedom. So now I want to hear from you. If you liked this story, comment 2. If you didn't, comment 7. And if you've ever had to set boundaries with someone in your life, whether family, friends, or anyone who took advantage of your kindness, let's talk about it in the comments. And hey, if you enjoy stories like this, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to Mr.HeartVibes for more. Your support keeps these stories coming, and I truly appreciate every one of you who takes the time to watch. See you in the next one.